Bonjour à tous, je vous demande d'accueillir donc David Cronenberg, le réalisateur.
David Cronenberg, the director.
La conférence est en français.
The
It's
press
not in English.
conference
Could you
will be
take
in
the
French.
the mic, please? Et puis donc, je vais aussi demander d'accueillir Saïd Ben Saïd, qui est donc
I'd like to
producteur.
introduce Saïd Ben Saïd, producer, Elizabeth Saunders,
Elizabeth Saunders, qui donc est une comédienne du film.
an actress in the film.
Guy Pearce, qui est
Guy
aussi
Pearce,
un des comédiens du film.
one of the actors in the film. Diane Kruger,
la grande comédienne du film également.
a lead role in the film. Vincent Cassel, who also plays a key part in this film. Sandrine Holt, who acts in the film as well. Martin Katz, who is one of the producers. And please give a round of applause for some key people who are here at the front. And Dixon, in charge of the costumes. Carol Spear, in charge of all the decors.
Et Doug Corr,
And
le
Doug Corr,
directeur de la photographie, et tout ça est très important.
the DOP.
Absolutely.
And a first question for you, David Cronenberg.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to work. What
Yes,
do I
it's work.
hear? I hear pop music.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
Vous m'entendez?
Now I
Can you
Muddy
hear me?
Waters. No, I'm hearing nothing.
Can you hear me now?
Vous m'entendez là?
Wait,
Can
I
you
hear
hear?
a little something,
Ah,
a little more.
Peut-être posez-la en anglais, la première.
oui.
Parlez.
Oui, je parle.
I'm speaking now. I hope you can hear.
Pouvez-vous...
C'est merveilleux.
Oui.
It's magic.
Technology, c'est miraculous.
It's a miraculous technology.
Pouvez-vous me dire
Could you please tell
comment est
me
venue l'idée
how
de
the idea
prendre
occurred
les
to you
linceuls
to use
comme un
shrouds
outil technologique
as a
qui est un lien
technological
entre
tool,
les vivants
a
et les
link
morts.
between the living and the dead?
Comment c'est arrivé cette idée?
How did this idea occur to you?
Have to have a translation of that.
Oh.
Marty?
The question is, where did this idea come from to use shrouds as the link between the living
Wait
and
a
the
second,
dead?
I'm hearing. Except that he's saying it in French again.
You need to switch channels. I think you're on the French channel. If you could turn to the English channel, perhaps.
Okay.
This is the English channel. I hope you can now
hey,
hear.
okay, very good, thank you. Yeah, where did the idea come from?
Yes.
Life itself. I don't think anybody who lives even a few years will experience the loss of some pet, an animal, of a friend. So it really just comes from life itself. Of course, it's well known that in this movie, I was discussing in a way the death of my wife, who I'd been with for 43 years, and really I stopped filmmaking for quite a while after that, 5 or 6 years. And then I felt the impulse to tell a story about it. Not exactly realistic, not really autobiography, but somehow blending my experience of her death and my loss, and with some other considerations. So that's really it. So in that sense, yes, it is my most autobiographical film, but it's not really autobiography. I mean, Vincent is. Of course, we look exactly alike, as everybody has said. He deliberately shaved his head and grew a beard so that you wouldn't see that. But we know that we look exactly, we're almost identical twins. So, and that was just to give the suggestion. As I said, I didn't cast Vincent because of his hair. It really because more of his talent, a bit. So, anyway, that's, I don't know what else I can say at the moment.
Thank you. Je crois que nous avons des questions.
I think we
déjà.
have some questions in the room.
I'm Fabiana Lima from Cinemação Brazil, and my question is for Mr. Cronenberg. First of all, I would like to say I'm a huge fan of your work, and Existence is one of my favorite movies of all time. And well, on the Shrouds, you talk mainly about grief, but also about conspiracy theories while combining it with the major artificial intelligence moment we're living in. This year, Cannes Film Festival also have an immersive competition with VR, and I think we can all agree that cinema is changing a lot through the years. I would like to know if in the future, considering how much your filmography talks about today, about body, technology, and society, would you consider making a movie using such immersive technologies? And also, do you think this is a revolutionary moment to filmmaking, or is technology in this arena shown itself more of a liability? Well, thank you.
Well, as a filmmaker who welcomed the advent of computer-generated imagery, we call CGI, it has actually made filmmaking much easier. And it's not, you don't have to be creating big Marvel sort of universe kind of creatures and so on. It's very, very useful. Just in the, excuse me, just in the normal course of filmmaking. For example, maybe, you might remember in some of the opening shots of the movie Alien, as the camera moves through the spaceship, you see a coffee cup that some crew member left there. And I noticed it right away, and it's still in the movie. But with CG, you can just take that coffee cup out, you know, like photoshopping it out. And so that's the kind of thing that is really very useful with CG, and I think artificial intelligence can enhance that. So on that level, I welcome it, and I look forward to using it. It's quite shocking, though, to see what can be done now, even now, with the beginnings of artificial intelligence. For example, it might completely transform the act of writing and directing. You might have seen some short films that have been done strictly by a writer, and they're now calling this writer a prompter, not a writer. And he prompts the AI by saying, it's going to be this kind of person walking down this kind of street with rain, and it's going to be dark, and it's going to be nighttime, and this woman walking down the street is going to be very tall and slim, and she's going to be wearing a leather skirt and a leather jacket. And then you say that to the AI, and it creates that right there visually. In other words, the movie is there, and it comes directly from what you wrote as a prompter. So you can imagine a screenwriter sitting there writing the movie, and if that person can write it in enough detail, the movie will appear. It'll be there. I mean, the whole idea of production and actors and so on will be gone. That's the promise and the threat of artificial intelligence. But you can see that it can work. It's in terms of a short little, 30-second film. It's that one was called Sora, I think. That was the version of artificial intelligence. So do we welcome that? Do we fear that? Both, both. Just, it's like nuclear fission, It's ferocious and terrifying, and it's also incredibly useful. So what do we do? I don't know. I have no idea.
Une autre question par là.
Bonjour, je suis Chiara Ugolini de la Repubblica, Italie. Une question pour Vincent Cassel.
I have a question for Vincent Cassel. Apart from the physical resemblance, there is a kind of alter ego, the alter ego of the director. How did you work with Mr. Cronenberg in order to espouse his dreams and leap into his imagination? There are a lot of themes which are very dear to the director. It's a very personal history on the part of the director.
Je vois bien qu'on se ressemble dans le film.
I can see that we do resemble each other in the film, but I don't have the impression that at any moment in time we really worked on this as a purpose. I was surprised when David asked me to act a character who would be inspired by himself, even if it's a cinema version of David Cronenberg. I didn't have the feeling that I was trying to become him. I talk a lot. I've never talked so much in a film
Donc ça a
before.
été un peu mon centre
That
de
was
concentration.
therefore my
En fait,
focus.
assez vite, dès
And
que je me
quite
suis
quickly,
habillé, dès
as
que j'ai
soon
commencé à
as
voir
I got dressed and
même
I
mon
started
visage et
to
ma silhouette
see
dans le
my
tombeau,
face
il est assez évident
reflected,
que
it
finalement,
was
il y avait
quite
quelque chose
obvious
qui s'était
that there
opéré.
was something
Et
that had
finalement,
happened
il y avait
there.
une ressemblance
And finally, there was a
cinématographique possible.
cinematographic
Et hier, j'ai
resemblance
découvert le
that
film.
became very possible.
Et
I
je dois
discovered the
moi-même
film
me rendre à
yesterday,
l'évidence qu'il
and
y a
I
certains
must
plans où c'est un peu trop drôle.
admit that there are some sequences
Mais,
where it's a bit
disons que je n'ai
troubling
pas essayé
even.
d'imiter,
I didn't try to imitate
David à aucun
David
moment.
at any point in time.
Mais bon, ça fait
But
3 films qu'on fait ensemble. Peut-être
we've
que
done
je
3
finis par
films
lui
together
couper quelques
now,
trucs, j'en sais rien.
and maybe I've drawn that close to him.
Une autre question? Juste là.
Hi, good morning. Congratulations for the movie to all the team. I am Arnau Martín from Desis Film Barcelona, and I have a question for Mr. Cronenberg regarding the idea of technology as a way of talking about the absence and as a way of thinking about those who are not here anymore, and also as a way of dealing with trauma. No, it's like for thinking about technology as a kind of ghost for the people who are not here anymore, but we feel either way. No, it's like I don't know what are your things about it. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the end.
Me neither.
Okay.
He
Huh?
was wondering, like, how you feel about technology being used as a tool to remember the ones that have departed.
Okay, to use the death.
Okay.
That's
Well, that has been done since the beginning of human civilization. I mean, depending on what the technology is, but the pyramids of Egypt are exactly that. I mean, using technology that was available at the time to build these amazing structures as a memorial, as a way of remembering, as a way of, in that sense, believing in a life after death, and that you had to prepare the bodies of the dead in a specific way in order that they could enter the afterlife and so on. So this is not new. Humans have been doing this for thousands and thousands of years, and as the technology changes, the idea of using the newest technology to do that kind of thing is I think it's an obvious evolution. And so in the Shrouds, that's exactly what's happening. The latest technology by this brilliant man, Karsh, who is, I actually think, I mean, the technology exists right now to create shrouds just as I have invented them in the script. It could be done if anybody really wanted to do it. In the screenplay, I imagine a clientele who actually would be interested in doing this. A couple of critics interviewers said to me, I would never do that. You know, I wouldn't want to see that or do that. And of course I understand it, but in my imagination, there are enough people in the world who would be interested in something like that, that it could be a viable industrial enterprise. Let's put it that way. So that's my prompt for this movie. I hope that answered your question.
Une autre question?
Hello, Chaz Ebert from the United States. Mr. Cronenberg, I very much like the ideas that you presented about grief and about technology. I was wondering if some of that technology actually existed, but my question goes more on the grief. I loved the way that you built it sort of as an homage to your late wife, Carolyn. When my late husband, Roger Ebert, was sick, we developed he lost his ability to speak. We sort of developed a mental telepathy with each other, to speak with each other. Also, I grew up as the daughter. My mother was a psychic and a spiritual minister. And so in her church, you actually did talk about communicating with those on the other side of the veil, and I did some of that with Roger after he left. Was it really Roger? I don't know, but anyway. So your ideas intrigued me because of that. And, but I have a question for you. My question is, at the end, when you're on the plane, when Vincent is on the plane with Sue Min, what are we to believe? Was she there? Is it just a dream? Why was she Why did she morph into the wife? What is the end going to Budapest left me confused.
Right.
Thank you.
That's a reasonable question. I might even be able to invent an answer. The idea was, yes, it's a dream. It begins with him because his connection with his dead wife is in the movie is. I didn't want to do the traditional flashback of these moments when they were on the beach together and the children and this and that. That's a traditional way of giving a feeling for what their relationship was. I didn't want to do that. But in the dream sequences, he is reliving in a dreamlike way the worst moments of the treatment of his wife and the surgery that she had to go through and all of that. And so that really continues in the plane. Of course, you see him dreaming at the beginning. He wakes up, but he's not really waking up. And the idea is simply this. If he's going to have a new love affair, and he's making love to this new woman that he's met, the making love to his wife is still there. It's a blend. It's so though that erotic experience with this new woman is really a blended experience of his past and the present. So in a way, he's kind of making love to his wife at the same time, and visually it made sense that it should be not lovemaking at the beginning of their relationship when they were in university together or whatever, but when she was desperately dying, mutilated and so on, but he still loved her. He still finds her sexually attractive, as is noted in one of the dream sequences. And so it's a blend. Any erotic episode in his life from that point on will also involve his dead wife. That's really what's meant there. That's Su Min is a blending at that point of Becca and Su Min.
Une autre question par là?
Hello, I am Adam G. Szabó from Hungary, and I would like to ask a question to David Cronenberg. Originally, the Shrouds was conceived as a limited series, and I would like to ask you, how did you turn the script of the limited series into a feature film one? Thank you.
Sorry, how did I
Saying it originally was meant to be a limited series, and how did you make it into a movie? How did you?
Right. I just stuck 2 episodes together. No, I mean, I have to thank Netflix because when I finally I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be making any more movies. After my wife died, of course, I didn't have the heart for it for a long time. And I had spent 1.5 years when she was going through chemotherapy and so on, so I really wasn't thinking of making movies. But I was intrigued by the idea of streaming series and the idea of doing, 10 episodes, 10 hours of something because I always thought that a movie, as we know it, around 2 hours long, is more like a short story or maybe a novella, not like a novel. And I thought a streaming series could be like a novel, could be as complex and nuanced as a novel, and you could take a lot of time with dialogue and so on. There's no hurry, because movie making is very demanding. You need a lot of discipline. So that got me interested in trying to, Netflix, of course, was in a way the originator of streaming. And I flew to LA and I pitched the Shrouds to 3 executives there. And they were intrigued enough to finance the writing of the first episode, which they called a prototype there for whatever reason. And then they liked that enough to give the green light to a second episode, which I wrote. And then they said that they didn't want to go further with it. And I asked them why. And they said, and then this was a very Hollywood thing to say. I was hoping that Netflix would not be Hollywood, but they really are. And they said, it's not what we fell in love with in the room. So I thought, well, in the room, I actually told you very precisely what I was intending. But maybe, you are dependent on their imagination when you do something like a pitch. And later I felt that what they fell in love with in the room was me, and that was very flattering, but not with my script. So, but at that point, I really liked what I wrote, and I thought, well, I can't let this die. I have to, let's see if we can turn it into a movie. And so I found two wonderful producers who I had worked with before, and they were interested in doing it, and so it became, I mean, you can see it's open. The movie has an open end. You could imagine a sequel. I mean, they're flying off to Budapest. You know, it could be a series, but it doesn't have to be. But that's basically how it happened.
Une autre question par là.
Hello, I'm Emma Sofia Diderson from Sweden. So I'm asking, my question is for David Cronenberg and Diane Kruger. I'm asking about the work, how you worked with the acting of the human experience of being a body, the human experience of being a body in life, fragilized by disease and then dead. And also to Diane Kruger, what was it like to see the pictures of your decomposed body? Thank you.
Sorry, what was it like?
She's asking how it was to work with me and to write those three parts for me, and then she's asking me how it was to see my body decomposing.
Right. Well, it was horrifying working with her. I know one day I'm going to say that for real, but in this case I'm lying. Well, it's interesting. I mean, of course, my actors, particularly Diane, knew that, and Vincent knew that this had some basis in my reality. But in fact, once I'm on the set, I have a distance. To me, I think I do this all the time. There's a lot of emotion in creating a movie anyway on the set, but it would wear you out if it was constant. You know, so I have a bit of a distance. I get kind of a chill, kind of cool demeanor, and also I love to let the actors show me what their interpretation is without my telling them what to do. I want to see what they come to the set with, based on the script, and then if I think it's going in the wrong direction, then I do. Talk to the actors about what perhaps we could change, In other words, I would say, what you're doing is shit. I either fire you or you do it better. This is directing. I try to be gentle. You can ask Diane what she thinks.
Yeah. So I was surprised. Obviously I hadn't worked with David, so we initially met and we had a really long chat about the script, and I did not know when I got the script that it was based on his personal life, some of it anyways. So I was a little bit in shock that I, was gonna do these three parts and be part of an intimate and a very traumatic moment in David's life. I mean, David didn't put that on me, but I took that very hard in a good way. I felt humbled by that. The process of working with David it's shocking because he doesn't do table reads and he doesn't rehearse, which to me, I remember arriving in Toronto. I was like, okay, so let's get started. And they're like, we'll see you in 2 weeks. You have a costume fitting tomorrow. I was like, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean, like what? And I remember calling David and saying, like, so how are you about your lines? Do you like to improvise? Like, do you like, He's like, no, I wrote it. It's all on the page. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, no, totally. So it's definitely, I think if this movie had come to me 10 years ago, I would have been completely frazzled on set because it's definitely unusual. And then I really, I think I felt like I was thriving on set because I felt like, you trusted me and that moved me. And so I was incredibly moved, and I felt loved. And so, you can do anything when you feel loved. watching my body decompose, I thought I looked pretty good in death, I have to say. No, for real. I looked pretty good in death.
Oh,
And,
yes.
You know?
Yes.
I know, I was kind of fascinated.
You're okay in life as well, you know that.
No, but I was like, okay. It's funny because, it's not funny, but I've never done anything like this. I've never done this much nudity on screen, so I felt very vulnerable all the time. And I publicly want to call out my co-star here for being so kind to me and having literally my back.
And your front.
No pun intended. So, and then when I watched the film, I found it more fascinating than repulsive, I was intrigued on how I would look in death, I guess.
Yeah, I appear in death in the movie. You might not have caught it, but when they are in the restaurant and they're looking out at the grave and they're taking a corpse out of the grave, it's me. Because I acted in a TV series called Slasher, in which I am the evil patriarch of a family. It's sort of my version of, I didn't write it, but it's sort of me in succession, playing the patriarch. Not as well as the actor who did that, but. And then I am killed, and I end up in a freezer. And to do that, they created, the special effects people who also worked on this movie, made a corpse of me. A full corpse, very, very accurate one. And you can actually see it on the internet because I made a little film called The Death of David Cronenberg. And you can see that, you'll find it on the net somewhere. And we decided, I asked if I could borrow that body to make that short from the TV series. And then we needed a body in this movie. And we didn't have much of a budget, I must say. So I said, just take my corpse and throw it in there. And so I'm there. So I've had the experience of, I honestly do not look as good as Diane, but, what can you do? So.
Une autre question.
It doesn't work. It works? Oh, yeah. I'm a psychologist and I do cinematography, so I'm sure I'm going to use your movie. And I have a question for the Diane and for the Vincent. What's exactly yours in this story? And what did you learn about yourself, except that you look good in death? But, something with maybe link with emotions. Thanks.
What did I learn? I don't know if it's about learning, but I think any film you make will take you to places that you are maybe not so comfortable going yourself. So in this case, being invited into something very intimate and something that deals with death and grief and what it means for a relationship of that length to part in death did make me, of course, think about my own mortality and of what hopefully I shall be so lucky to experience in a human interaction with someone. I hadn't really thought about what it would mean to be physically parting with someone. I've had people in my family that have passed, but what it means for a man and a woman to part physically and to let go of the body, especially during the duration of an illness where the person eventually is going to pass and you kind of have this long period of saying goodbye and saying hopefully everything that you wanted to say to that person. But what Vincent's character says in the film is, I had this urge to see her in the coffin, and I had this urge to jump in with her. The thought of her being alone in death, that struck me so much, and it made me very emotional. It still does. I think that's a very beautiful thought. And when you hear that, to me, the movie, everything makes sense. It's dreamlike, maybe, but it's not. Everybody thinks about these things. And so I find it an incredibly emotional film with all his wonderful craziness.
Et vous, Vincent, qu'est-ce que vous avez ressenti justement?
Vincent, what did you feel in the film?
I don't know what I've learned. Mais on le dit en français peut-être, non? In French,
Non,
in English,
en anglais,
whatever.
parce que peut-être que David
Yeah, so I'll
Cronenberg
speak
pourra-
for David. Yes, please. No, but I mean, so I discovered the movie yesterday, and I have to say that I was in shock because suddenly I realized things that I understood while I was reading the script, but not that precisely. And this whole movie, to me, appears like a dream or a nightmare. And it feels like everybody has his own way to cope with grief and to lose somebody, la perte de l'être aimé. And I was thinking about that watching the movie yesterday, is that this character finally has this kind of impulse towards life because he's trying, you know? I mean, it seems totally crazy to go to that extent, like invent a machine so you can cope with the fact that somebody's going to disappear forever and you want to accompany that person until the last minute. That seems to be a pretty crazy idea, but that's the kind of things we do when we can't cope with reality, I think. So I thought at the end of the day, though it's a very poetic love story nightmare, I think there is hope in it. Even the fact that at the end, with this crazy flight towards Hungary, why not, dream destination, it's the beginning of a new love, getting rid of the past. I don't know. I don't know what I've learned, but I think because I did this movie, I will learn more things in the future.
I would like to say something about conspiracy, because I've been reading a couple of reviews and some reviewers, very ignorant, stupid ones, are thinking that the whole conspiracy aspect of the film, the paranoia and stuff, has nothing to do with the love story and the grief and stuff. And of course, it means they completely did not understand the film. The idea of grief and paranoia and conspiracy, the idea that a conspiracy theory, as is actually mentioned by Diane's character, is a grief strategy. It's a strategy to cope with grief. That is to say, if you're an atheist like I am and you don't believe in an afterlife, then the death of someone you love is meaningless. It has no meaning. It just, why did it happen? Why did it happen now? Why wasn't it somebody else who died instead? And it's very difficult for people to live with no meaning. We are evolved as a species to need meaning, to give purpose and shape to our lives. So one way that you can create meaning when there perhaps really isn't any is to come up with a theory, a conspiracy perhaps theory, that explains why this person died. It wasn't just genetic or DNA problem that caused cancer. It was a conspiracy of doctors who wanted to kill her because she was involved in some experiments and was about to reveal this to the world, that she was being experimented on by evil doctors. Whatever the conspiracy is, it gives you a sense of knowledge and power, that you know something that other people don't know, that perhaps you will even be able to correct this as a kind of secret agent or a detective or something. It empowers you to have knowledge of a conspiracy. And I think you can see that in the politics of today with all of the very, very inventive, crazy conspiracy theories, that it's giving people a voice and a sense of importance. And the same can be true of a grief conspiracy. So that's really why that's in the movie. These very stupid journalists who did not see this, I'm sure that none of you are among them. I have to say that, but really, there was a purpose to it. Now, you might think it doesn't work or you don't believe it, that's one thing, but to not notice it, to me, is a different problem as a filmmaker. Anyway, in case anybody was going to ask.
Est-ce qu'il y a une autre question?
I think we have another question at the back.
Hi, Lina Bassi, Day-Night TV Ukraine. I would like to continue my question to Diane Kruger, who created maybe two, maybe even three characters on the screen, such a different but equally attractive in different way. So I'm just wondering, and one of them was, by the way, very unrecognizable. And I'm wondering how was the process switching to one to another one. And to Sandrine, I would like to ask you about your interpretation of your character, such a blind, seductive beauty. So I'm really wondering what is your take on it. Thank you so much.
Are you starting? You go. You go.
Okay. Sumin, I was very. I think she has her own grief because she knows she's about to lose her husband, who to some extent has created who she is. And I think it's her loneliness that draws her to Karsh. And I loved playing this character because she had so much gravitas and strength and vibrancy. And also that she had an optimism about her that I felt was really important to have. That's about it. I didn't have a lot of time to prepare with that, but I was able to speak to a friend of mine who had a lot of blind coaching and who had been on a show that was where he had to play a blind character. So he was able to jump on the phone with me a couple of times and really help me out.
By the way, I am a very lazy director, and so when my actors do these things by themselves and I don't have to do anything, I'm always very grateful.
Et donc, nous allons terminer cette conférence de presse sur cette parole. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.